Everyone, welcome. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Uh, before we get started, I've never I've never remembered to do this at the beginning of videos. Just if you're a returning viewer or you're new here, thanks for joining. Thanks for coming back. If you haven't already and you are so inclined, please consider dropping us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate all the help we can get to grow this channel, to help grow this initiative that we have to better the lives of veterans in our communities. So we're seeing growth, and we appreciate all the participation. But if you are a person that hasn't liked or subscribed or whatever, please consider doing that. We really would appreciate it. Not long ago, we did a show, Jason and I, here on the channel about veteran identity and identity that veterans choose to have. And so, as I was perusing, as I do, through news and other social media and videos and this and that and the other thing, and then just life experience and talking to people in person that you come across, it becomes clear that conversations, even casual, with other veterans and myself, seem to turn into conversations about identity. The identities that we choose to wear at home in private, the identities we choose to display in public, at work, if we're out with the guys or out with friends, having a couple drinks or whatever it is, at the hunting shack, the identities that we choose to display often become topic of conversation with other veterans. And usually to contrast between what the civilians maybe in our lives or in this particular space are doing, thinking, saying, the way they display themselves, the way they act, maybe questioning someone's moral compass based on their actions. And I think it's interesting because as veterans, I think to a certain extent, we judge others. And maybe rightfully so, maybe not rightfully so, but I think that it happens. And so as I was perusing through different sources of information, I came across this article that talked about the chess scene in Saving Private Ryan. And I've seen the movie numerous times. I believe most people have. I think unless you are a very young person, you have seen Saving Private Ryan or parts of it or heard about it or had conversations or saw clips on the internet or whatever that may be. But this particular author goes into depth about identity of the squad of men that are depicted in the movie. Most importantly, Tom Hanks's character, Captain Miller, and how he leads the troops and how he leads the team. And it gets into the chess scene, which is towards the end of the movie, when they're trying to decide what to do after they find Private Ryan, and they've went through all the stuff. They've lost a couple of guys. They've taken casualties, and the team is frustrated as hell. To them, to the grunts, to the soldiers, they see a bullshit mission. They see that this guy that they're going to march across Europe to find may just not be worthy of the potential loss of life of all of these people. And Captain Miller does a pretty good job at staying calm and leading his troops effectively. And if you remember properly, they had a bet, they had a pool going about who Captain Miller was back at home. What did he do for a living? Where did he live? Is he married? Is he this? Is he that? Because after all, he's a captain in a Ranger regiment. And for those of you who may not know what that means, the Army Rangers are an elite or upper echelon. I don't know if they're elite. Maybe the SF guys would disagree. But compared to me, they're elite. Compared to what I did with my service, they're elite soldiers. So who could he be? Who could Captain Miller really be? Nobody thought that he was a teacher from some small town in Pennsylvania. Well, this guy's got to be a grisly, combat eating madman. Because in the movie, Captain Miller had already been in combat in Italy, seen some pretty gruesome stuff. And now he was leading his rangers up the beach into the mainland to continue to fight this war before they're given this mission to wander through the countryside of France and find Private Ryan. But at one point, the guys seem to be straying. I believe it was when they lost their medic. And Captain Miller stands up and he talks about who he is. He says, hey, what's the pool on me? What are you guys up to? And then he just drops it. Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher from Adley, Pennsylvania. It's what I do. I got a wife. She likes to garden. All of those things. And the guys seem dumbfounded. How could this guy, who is now marching across France on what seemingly to some is some kind of suicide mission to save some private who's somewhere in France that lost all of his brothers? And the big guy, some general, the big guy up top, said, go find him. We're sending him home. And the whole idea was that, of course, his mother was going to get multiple letters and one visit to tell her that all of her kids had died in combat, except for the one. And they're going to send him home to her. But that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is this identity. It says here in the article that there's this idea of civilian memory as survival, right? And so I'll read it here just for you. The idea of civilian memory as survival echoes through military history. Soldiers in every conflict have clung to their pre-war identities as a tether to sanity. World War II letters reference home life, family roles, jobs waiting back in towns like Adley, Pennsylvania. And Captain Miller's confession isn't just a narrative, it's a documentary, this guy says. And he goes on to tell the people, sometimes I wonder if I've changed so much that my wife is even going to recognize me. And at the end of the film, if you remember, when they're trying to egress over the bridge so they can blow the bridge and keep the Germans from advancing, and Captain Miller has been incapacitated and he's gasping for his last breaths, and he grabs Private Ryan and says, earn this. Well, the author seems to think that he wasn't just talking to Private Ryan, he was talking to anybody who's watching the movie. But let's get back to this identity thing. And I think that it's not just something that was particular or specific to World War II. When they reference home life, family roles, jobs, their girlfriends, their trucks, their cars, nowadays, who knows, their computer setups, their video game, whatever it is. This idea that men and women who join the military and go forward to fight in combat are these superheroes, I guess is a good way to say it. I don't know that most men and women in uniform, when they're on their way to wherever it is they're going to fight, that they have some kind of superhero complex. Maybe some do. Maybe some people do. And hey, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you need those people on a battlefield. The guys that are going to not ask twice, and they're going to take that building, and they're going to advance, and they're going to fight until their last breath. That's kind of what the infantry teaches, right? We're going to destroy our enemy. We're going to wipe them off the face of the earth with all the tools of war that are available to us and used in their full capacity, we are going to absolutely annihilate our enemy. And it's true. It's true. That is what they train. And that is, per doctrine, how at least the United States Army infantry is trained to fight. At least the way I was raised in the Army, the way that I was brought up in the infantry, that's how we trained. That was the narrative that our leadership gave us. And so what I think we're talking about here is the difference between that narrative and what our real true identity is. And I think that veterans get caught up because to a certain extent, there's pressure. Maybe it's just this preconceived notion that you have to uphold that image. Because the reality is that in the moment, in combat, when the bullets are flying and RPGs are skipping across the road, you do not feel like a superhero. When IEDs are going off close to you or next to you, and there's all this explosions and destruction, or even if you come across it after it happened, I mean, a lot of the things that we did when I was in Iraq were we traveled up and down the highways, right? So if there was this huge firefight and complex attack and vehicles destroyed and maybe there's bodies around, in enemy bodies, and we never left any people behind that I witnessed in my travels. We did see some enemy bodies laying around. That destruction you still have to go through, right? That's your only way, north or south, east or west, on the main supply route. The reality of all that is when bullets are flying and RPGs are skipping off the road and IEDs are going off and there's people running around, there may be death everywhere. I mean, everybody's experience was different. You don't feel like a superhero. In fact, when people talk about how the human mind and the human condition normally isn't programmed to deal with that type of destruction and chaos time after time after time again, like some people seen through the courses of their whole deployment or deployments plural. Well, what happens when we get home? What happens when you get home and the whole time you've been gone, when you do have downtime, you think of things like this? Will my wife even recognize who I am? Will my kids remember me? Will my friends who are close to me, or even maybe just acquaintances, will they still accept me for who I am because of what I've done? Where I've been? Maybe because they don't know. Maybe because they're scared to ask. They're scared to learn. Maybe they don't want to know. And I guess I would say that I don't know a whole lot of veterans that are itching to tell their stories, the gruesome stories, the sad stories, the scary stories. Some are maybe, but there isn't a whole lot of them, I don't think. I think that a lot of those things, they plague men and women for a long time. But yet we're left to feel, whether it's our fault or societal pressure or historical pressure, whatever it is, however you want to label it. Maybe that's the pressure to keep up this hero facade. This idea that if I don't mind, it don't matter. Mind over matter type thing. But the truth is that many soldiers are thinking about. I know I thought about it often. I mean, for example, my son was 6 months old when I deployed to Iraq the first time. When I came home, he was 2 years old. Now in that deployment cycle, I got to come home on leave for 14 days. My son's mother had an operation that I was allowed to go home for a few days to see her through that. We were married at the time, and I thought about it often. I thought about how this experience is going to change who I am. I thought about how I was going to deal with the whole world moving on without me. Everything that I remembered, that I loved, that I cherished, that I liked, everything keeps going, everything keeps rolling. But I have to return home, and I got to perform, and I got a little kid to worry about. Got to make sure I get back to work in a reasonable time. I was married, but it wasn't long after that fell apart, of course. And I didn't really have a good answer for myself. You do a lot of thinking once you start the journey home, because it's not a short journey. I mean, you gotta go. We had to go to Kuwait. We had to sit and wait for our flights a day or two, maybe a week for some. I mean, we were bringing 3,000, 4,000 Minnesotan soldiers back home. So I mean, it doesn't happen quickly. It happens over a period of time. So we had to go from Iraq to Kuwait and wait for our flights, and then we had to go to National Guard base in Wisconsin, Fort McCoy. And we had to spend X amount of days there as like this buffer time, right? This time to just chill out, reacclimate, do some thinking, get some stuff into perspective. We had administrative tasks to do, but we did have a lot of downtime. And our team in particular, we did a lot of hanging out together, and to continue to solidify this relationship that we had built over the last 2 years and before. And then you get on a bus one morning to take the 3 or 4 hour ride home. And you put on your headphones and you're listening to, back then it was your iPod Nano or whatever it was, the coolest new iPod. And you start to think about what is this reunion with my family, with my kids, with my wife, with my parents. It's not going to be long till I see my buddies, my friends. In a few weeks or whatever, I'm going to have to go back to work. How are these reunions with all of these people going to go? And for me in particular, I never really came up with a great answer. I second guessed a lot of things about how I was going to handle my return home. And then we hit the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. And at the border, they had fire trucks and squad cars to escort us to the armory. It was a really neat thing to see. There were fire trucks and police cars and ambulances on overpasses. They gave us this motorcade of emergency vehicles all the way from the border to our armory, which is about a 30-minute drive, maybe 40-minute drive. And it was really nice. But for me, and maybe for others, that's when reality started to sink in a little bit more. Okay, well, I'm 30 minutes out. I got 30 minutes to come up with a tentative plan. And I didn't. And I stepped off that bus, and we couldn't go to our families. We had to get in formation, of course, and the commander has to release you, and you do the stuff, be formally released. Then you're walking over to your family, and I don't want to make it sound like you're not happy to see them, and it's not an exciting moment, because it 1,000% is. But I also had this, I don't want to say it was sheer panic or anything. Like, I wasn't scared, but I had this nervousness that I couldn't tuck away. And I think And maybe we'd have to ask people like my parents. But I think that it was written all over my face. Maybe not. It sure felt like it was. I was terrified. I was terrified to come home. And I shouldn't even say that. I shouldn't say that I was terrified, but I was very nervous, because if you think about it, war is one of these things that it can be boring some days. I mean, we ran a whole shit ton of missions, and we had missions where nothing happened. Of course, we didn't get attacked. We didn't come across any IEDs. We didn't have any problems. You know, we started our convoy and we rolled all the way through. We refueled, we got dinner, and we kept going. And it was cool. Next day we got up and brought the trucks back down south to be reloaded to haul them back up north to keep the supply train running. But you have time while you're there to think. You have time to process. You have time to sit around with your team. Monday morning quarterback, last night's mission. If we hit an IED or we found IEDs or we took small arms fire, there was a complex attack, whatever it was. We always did that. And that became a norm, became a comfort. And so you step off this bus and you kind of get this feeling like you're gearing up to go on a mission. Because now you have to think about what mask you're going to put on. All the things that happened to you, that you witnessed, whatever it is, positive or negative or indifferent, all of those things are acceptable to talk about. They're acceptable to feel. It's normal. But what you realize real quick is that the people that you hold most dear, that you hold closest to you, either can never understand, they can't process it, or they can't stomach it. Or at least that's the way you feel about it. Whether that's true for everybody's families and friends and whatnot is hard. I mean, I can't say that. But I know that that's how I felt. I felt like if I unload all these things that I have floating around in my mind, there's going to be some people looking out the side of their face at me going, holy shit, what happened? And to be quite honest, there's a whole shit ton of soldiers that had way more aggressive things happen to them, that had way more catastrophic injuries, that lost men, that lost friends, lost family. There are so many stories, I'm sure, that make mine sound like sleepaway camp when we were kids in the summer. And I recognize that. I can identify that. But I think one thing that kind of ties all of us together, maybe we like to admit it or don't, or maybe we see it or don't, is that I believe that there are many soldiers, many veterans who have this feeling that I can't tell all of these people all of this stuff. Because this identity that is assumed of us, this social norm, maybe, that this facade that people assume that we're going to have, and they don't even think it's a facade. They don't think it's a mask. They don't think it's a show. I think some people just think that these are how military veterans roll. Because to be quite honest, there's a lot of us that have pretty obscure ways of thinking. We have some pretty obscure habits or hobbies or whatever. And I think that for the most part, a lot of us kind of have a very sensitive bullshit meter. I think that we also have this idea that when we see things, much like is going on in our country today, all of this fighting and this just the toxic things happening in our government between both sides and all this stuff. And quite honestly, sometimes I feel like a lot of this stuff is happening just because all of these people hate Donald Trump so much. I recently watched a podcast. I forget the name of it, but it was some real far left guy, and had these two old ass ladies from Oklahoma on, who are far left folks too, and they talk about how when they leave Oklahoma City, which is a purple city apparently, and they go out into the rural areas of Oklahoma. The one lady was saying that her son plays basketball, and they had to go out to these rural places, these rural schools and gymnasiums, so her son could play basketball games. And it was sickening how many Trumpers and MAGA hats and T-shirts and bumper stickers and yard signs and this and that and the other thing. It was sickening to her. And so that narrative also makes me think, well, where are all the people where are the numbers of people that overwhelmingly elected this guy into office? And I guess I don't know a good answer for that, but I think that there's a lot more people speaking up, speaking their mind, being brash, being forward, being direct, and not talking real nice any longer. And I think that the further that all this stuff goes, the more the MAGA movement, if you want to call it that, that's what they like to call it, is going to get more aggressive. Is it a good thing? I don't know. Could it blow up in everyone's face? I'm sure it could. But at the end of the day, yeah, let's just table that. We're not talking about that. Sorry, soapbox. I'm getting on the soapbox, getting off topic. I think that we learn as veterans and military people. I think that we learn, whether it's quickly or just eventually, that you have to be a person of a few different masks. You have to be a person of a few different identities. Because I think what some people struggle with is, if I let too much out, if I put on the wrong mask today, I'm gonna ruin relationships. Maybe I'm gonna scare somebody. Someone may look at me different. It's gonna cause a conflict. Maybe somebody will love it. Maybe people will love it. I mean, I suppose it has a positive connotation also at times. But what do we really do about shaping this narrative that is the veteran culture in our communities if we don't know exactly what mask to put on? And so I think that over time, and more recently, there's been a lot more veterans out in the public space. There's been a lot more conversations, albeit not all positive ones, but conversations nonetheless. And so we talked on this show not long ago, probably more towards the election. I talked about it also on the Richard Leonard show I do over on Rumble, that this whole thing has just gone nuts. And is anybody really sure what the actual narrative is anymore? And does it really matter? As polarized as we are now in this country, does it really matter what mask I put on from day to day? As long as it doesn't negatively affect my relationship at home with my wife or my kids, if it doesn't affect the relationships with other family, and I guess if it doesn't directly impact my job a whole bunch, do we really care? Do we really care how people see us? Because it doesn't seem to matter how many conversations are had, how many videos are made, how many people stand up and scream from the mountaintops, narrative A, B, C, or D. It doesn't seem to really matter. what mask I'm wearing. Am I going to be the gentle, humble veteran today? Am I going to be the one that is just frustrated and upset with the world? Maybe it's just a bad day. But even on the bad days, can I display that it's a bad day? Because the people that know me, especially the ones that know me well, they have a pretty dang good idea of where I've been, what I've done, how it's affected me, both positive and negatively. And so what do you do? If you wear this mask, well, you might offend somebody. But do we really care about that? Because wearing this mask and offending some stranger isn't going to offend my wife. It ain't going to offend my kids. It's not going to affect my relationships with my buddies. Or do I wear this mask? This mask that is just pissed off at the world. Or do I wear the mask of gentle, kind, thoughtful, accommodating veteran that has cool, calm, and collected conversations about things that are not so great in our community or in our culture? And so now you're left to juggle. And you know what? Maybe that's true for people in all different kinds of spaces. Maybe that's not just specific to military veterans and military members. I seem to think that although it may be similar, it is very different. You see, these men and women are being asked to do things that, of course, they've signed up for, they've been trained for, but they're also being asked to endure things that they haven't been taught to properly process. We've talked about that before. The military is really good at taking you in and tearing you down to the studs and rebuilding you in their image as a warrior, as a soldier, somebody with integrity, strong moral compass, and honor, and courage. But when you've walked through your military career, or you've worked your way through your military career, and some of us have endured some pretty shitty things, the Army's not real good at teaching us how to process that. They can never teach you to forget it. I mean, those things are burned into the memories of warriors across the centuries. War is hell, and the people that fight it don't ever forget it. But there has to be a way, at least they say, for you to come home and reintegrate. Well, how integrated do we become, really? Or are we just displaying an array of masks that we wear for any given situation? And all of this is very interesting because it reminds me of a conversation that I had with my therapist at one point. And she was talking to me about the amount of energy it takes for many of her patients that she treats, the amount of energy it takes them just to get through the day. Just to get through the day, and not even yet. So when we think about a day's worth of activities and a day's worth of problems or situations or whatever you want to call it, before we even deal with the first one in the beginning of the day, she was talking about how much energy it takes to just get yourself into that place in the morning and then keep yourself there and then navigate through your day, navigating any other issues, any other problems, any other injuries that maybe you have that you have to live with. Any of those things, And then you add families, and you add kids, and you add 1, 2, maybe even 3 jobs, and you add bills that you can't pay. Your car breaks down. You know, maybe you have some joy, right? Like, all right, hey, Wednesday nights are bowling night, so every Wednesday I get to go bowling. That's fun. That's cool. Weekend comes, and you can take the kids camping, or you can go out with the boys and play around at golf and have some beers, or whatever it is. But she was talking about how much it takes to just get through the day, even if nothing happens. And I think about that conversation that we had often. And sometimes I think, well, I mean, shit, anybody can say that. It takes a lot of energy just to get up out of bed and start my day. And so sometimes I fully agree. Sometimes when my alarm clock goes off to get up in the morning, I look at my phone and go, no effing way. Not today. Not today. Not today. But you have to. You got to grab that mask, put it on, get up, you get your ass up out of bed, do your ablutions, get dressed, throw something down your throat, let the dog pee, and head out to whatever it is that you need to do for the day. And it becomes taxing. And so maybe that's not true for everybody. But I think we are at a spot now in our country where I don't want to say that we have that veterans they don't have a voice, because I think we have more voices in the veteran community out in the public space now than we have in a very long time. But are these voices? See, here's the thing. This whole social media and content creation thing, it's about numbers. Some people are doing it just for money, and that's great. I think there's the social media and content creating and podcasting and all this stuff has opened up a lot of avenues for a lot of people. But how many people in our community are talking about these types of things? Because when we sit back and we really look at the issues that the veteran community is having in this country as it relates to the political structure and just government in general, the VA, the Department of Defense, things going on around us in our communities that we all see a little bit differently than the other folks in our communities that don't have the same life experience, that haven't had to be in a place where they had to put it away. Okay, so this thing happened to me today. And there are people that it'll crumble their soul and their day's over. Maybe their next day's over. And it happens to veterans too. But most of us don't or won't allow that to happen. Why? Because there's this identity that we have to put forward, that we have to choose every day to display. Sometimes we fail, and sometimes we're very successful. But it's a real conundrum for people, I think. And I think it goes untalked about. I think that there are veterans in this country who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who have never really gotten stuff off their chest. Maybe not in a way that makes them more comfortable in their own skin. Things like moral injury are, I don't want to say they're debilitating, but I think that it can be for people. And I think that folks who suffer from these moral injuries, they call it, I think with treatment they can learn to process it, not get over it, but accept it, and of course lead positive, fruitful lives from there on out. But what do we do with ourselves? I think is the ultimate question, and I don't know what the answer is. So I've been blabbing at you for 40 minutes. I don't really have a good answer. But I will say that this article about the chess scene in Saving Private Ryan really made me think about a lot of different things. And as many times as I'd seen that movie, I never thought about this scene in that way. The article ends by saying this: in Saving Private Ryan, violence is constant, but the most cutting blow may be the quiet realization that these men, often depicted as heroes, are teachers, they're typists, they're tradesmen, and they're just trying to get home. The chess scene is a small move in the film's larger strategy, but its emotional impact is enormous. It doesn't advance the mission, but it reminds us of why the mission matters. And so when you think about that in particular, I think it's pretty powerful, right? It's not about, in this particular situation, it wasn't about completing the mission. Captain Miller, Tom Hanks, was trying to get these men to understand, but it's not, this particular time, it's not necessarily about the mission. It's about why the mission matters. And for everybody, it's different. The mission matters to Private Ryan because he's got a ticket home. Now, he didn't want to leave his guys. He wanted to stay and fight for that bridge with what he said was the only brothers he had left, and that his mother would understand. Captain Miller saw this mission also as his ticket home. And he said to the men, if going out there and finding this guy and sending him home is my ticket back to my wife, back to my life that I had before I got here, then God damn it, I'm going to go find him. And you guys can come with me or not, but I'm going to complete this mission or die trying. And of course, Captain Miller died trying. And at the end of the movie, if you remember, we see Private Ryan as an old man at the cemetery, I assume in Normandy, standing at Captain Miller's headstone. He looks at his wife and asks if he's a good man. He struggles, even after all that time. Now he's an old man, gray hair. Did he earn it? Did he earn the life that he led? Did he earn it? All those men who died to save him, even the ones that died whose mission wasn't to save them, still his brothers, did he earn it? Did he earn their sacrifice? Now, imagine thinking about that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, your whole life, from the time you're 21, 22, till you're 70 or 75, however old he was at the end of the movie. And not being able to have confidence in himself that he earned the sacrifice of all those men. He still had to ask his wife. And if you think about it, I'm quite sure, as the story goes, that Private Ryan had those words echoing in his mind his whole life. Earn this. And I would imagine, the way he was depicted, that he went out of his way to do the right thing. He went out of his way to have integrity. He went out of his way to be a good man and to not squander the sacrifice of all the other people around him that lost their lives for him to go home. And so, with all of that being said, I think it's important to recognize, because what I have a hard time understanding is how our communities have a hard time doing the same thing. How our communities have a hard time just being good people. And now we're at this place where we're destroying property and we're fighting and we're killing each other and all kinds of just nonsense. Like, people have actually gone insane, it seems. And so there's a lot of theories about that also. I mean, people will talk about how, well, all these blue-haired lefties are super crazy because they took all these shots. And these shots are making people nuts. Well, most of the Republicans didn't take shots, so they're not as crazy. Well, I don't know. I think there's crazy on both sides of the argument. There's a lot of crazy out there. I think that the people that sit somewhere in the middle, that just want to be able to put some money away, that want to just live their lives and find whatever happiness means to them. I think it's a large group of people, but I think that group of people is just a little more silent. They're just a little more nonchalant about saying the things that they're thinking. Although I think that folks are getting a little more brave and they're getting a little more boisterous and they're expressing their opinions a little bit more. But I think that we see all this craziness because it's the squeaky wheel. It's the loudest child in the room, if you will. And all the powers that be that control the flow of information, so the media, social media, whatever, influencers, podcasters, whatever you want to call it, however you get your stuff, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of places to just get facts, to just get news. Like, when did we get to that? Like Jason and I talked about recently, when did we get to that place where our newscasters aren't just telling you what happened today and then saying, hey, good night, enjoy the weather tomorrow. It's either going to rain. It's a 50-50 shot, rain or sun. All right, good night. How did we get to this place where there's so many media outlets that have one super strong stance on one side of the aisle about all the issues? And it's just attack after attack after attack after attack. At the end of the day, it all seems like this big power struggle for money and re-elections and votes. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I think a lot of what's happening is people trying to save face so that they can count on their votes for the next election. A lot of the folks on the left are going to keep up these crazy narratives because that's what their constituents vote them in to do. Is it going to work? I don't know. I can tell you one thing that's not going away, folks. Our taxes aren't going away. All this craziness going on in our country isn't going away anytime soon. Crime isn't going away anytime soon. Seems like we're making some really good strides on the illegal immigration issue. They say the border's closed and crossings are down almost 99.8% or whatever number they throw out. What about just the common everyday American that wants to get up, go to work, come home, go to the kids' baseball game, come back home, have ice cream, put the kids to bed, watch a story with their spouse, and go to bed and do it all over again tomorrow? And wake up, go to work, collect their paycheck, and do it all over again and find their happiness. And there just seems to be so many things that are getting in the way of that for people on all spaces of the spectrum. I mean, business owners, especially here in Minnesota, are just getting ramrodded by Tim Walz. I think business owners in other parts of the country are seeing better results, which is great. We're still being force-fed trannies in women's sport, dudes in women's sports. We're still being force-fed all of this war talk and money spending and tax hikes, and Donald Trump's a liar. He's gone crazy. We're all going to die. He's going to put us in collapse, and we're going to be taken over, and we're going to be speaking Russian or Chinese or something in 10 years. Don't worry about it. America's going to fall. Well, what kind of shit is that? Even if I'm not even going to say that. I'm not even going to say, well, fuck it. Even if that happens, do we have to push that narrative? Aren't we just pushing for it to happen sooner? If we keep telling people, hey, we're gonna collapse. So make sure you get your licks in before it all happens. Make sure you hoard a bunch of money. Make sure you fuck over your neighbor. This is not the America these men in Saving Private Ryan were fighting for. Not that they're real people. It's not a true story. But that's not the idea that we fought for. And of course, there's many people out there that says this whole idea of America has been a lie for decades. It's all been a lie. Okay, maybe it has. But for so many people, they're proud of their service. They're proud of their careers. They're proud of their families. They're proud of whatever it is they're proud of. And so is it considered like willful ignorance to just say, yeah, I know, I heard it, I read it, I watched it, I saw it, but I'm not going to engage? Is that willful ignorance, or is that just minding your own business, keeping your nose to the grindstone and doing what you have to do to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself? Or are we supposed to? Are we supposed to choose to wear the mask of a sheep? Are we supposed to not be free thinkers anymore? Are we just supposed to gorge ourselves with all these narratives and all this bullshit that we're force fed by the media, by crazy people in passing, people who think we're crazy? What's it going to take for us to get to a place where we can at least have civil conversation again? What's it going to take to get to a place where old friends who've been knowing each other for 30, 40 years, who are now separated because of their political views, what is it going to take for them to come back together, reconcile, and be friends again? And not have it matter who you voted for. This idea that we can just completely change and shift what's going to be done from election to election or from person to person, I think is really stupid, because at the end of the day, we're stuck doing whatever the people in office, in whatever elected office or appointed office, tell us we're going to do. And we can scream about it. We can bitch about it. We can hold sit-ins. We can start dealerships on fire. We can attack people. We can protest. We can do all of those things. And nothing's going to change. Nothing that they do at the top is going to change based on how we react. But where we've been lost, I believe, is that we've lost the ability to think for ourselves, have conversation that doesn't include some mainstream media source or some craziness that you see on the internet. Why does it have to be talked about all the time? Why can't we just agree to disagree on politics? Like whatever happened to that rule? Religion and politics, we don't talk about it. I remember in my 20s being in bars and people start talking about politics or God or whatever, and bartenders would say, we're not talking about politics or religion in here, not while everyone's drinking. It just causes problems, and people get really passionate, as we've seen over the last however many years. But why is it that a person who is a staunch Democrat and a person who are a staunch Republican, who maybe have been friends for, let's just say, 10 years, can't sit down and watch a football game together and have a good time and talk about the old days and all that shit? Just because that relationship is probably more important, I would think. I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, the identity that we choose to wear as veterans differs every day. The way that we see the world and how we put out information, of course, is different for everybody. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there are a large number of veterans who hold back. They hold back because they don't think that anybody can really understand, except for the folks that were there with them or somebody who has been there. They don't think, much like I thought, that, and still think, and my wife would tell you that I'm guilty of this now today even. This idea that the things that happened to me or us as a country, as a military force, that the things that happened there, whether it be Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, any theater, the Gulf War, anywhere, the things that happen there don't belong at home. They don't belong in the minds of our wives. They don't belong in the minds of our children. And to some extent, maybe some people feel like they don't belong in the minds of our community. I mean, everyone knows war is hell. People die. Buildings and everything get destroyed. Lives are altered forever. And the men and women on both sides of the fight that fight the battles are left to pick up the pieces the rest of their lives. But they don't always feel like it's appropriate to pick up the pieces in certain spaces. So that we then have to reach for a different mask and put it on. And much like we're taught in the military, tuck it away for now. Tuck it away for now and we can deal with it later. Problem is, a lot of times I think veterans don't deal with it later. At least not effectively. I mean, as we know, veteran suicide numbers have been sky high for years. Chemical dependency becomes an issue for veterans. Housing, homelessness becomes an issue for veterans. Medical care becomes an issue for veterans. It's all kinds of issues. And all of it leads back to combat or our military service. If you didn't serve in combat, it still leads back to your military service. And you have to put on the correct mask. You have to put on the correct mask for the correct setting. It's all about identity, right? The community sees us as heroes. The government tells you veterans are heroes. Video games tell you veterans are heroes. Movies tell you veterans are heroes, most of them. Saving Private Ryan, now that you read this, if you watch it again and think about this idea that Tom Hanks he wasn't this superhero. He wasn't this super soldier that was trekking across France, just killing Nazis all over the place and destroying shit and being the king of the hill. He was just trying to get home. And I think that that's something all of us who served, especially in the forward area, can agree with. At a certain point during your time in whatever place you served, of course, the mission always is in the front of your mind. But the other thing that never leaves your thought process is how long it's going to be until you get to go home. How long it's going to be till you get to call home. Nowadays, FaceTime or Zoom. How long is it going to be until I can get back to the base and Zoom my kids? Just want to see my kids. Just want to talk to my wife. I want to see my mother. I want to talk to my dad about his boat he got running and put in the water. I want to talk to him about that. But we got to complete the mission. There'll be time. There'll be time for that later. Well, but sometimes later never comes. And so we have to just choose a mask. Maybe I'm wrong. Leave some comments. If you have some insight, you have some ideas, I kind of feel like the last 1 hour and 1 minute I've just been kind of blathering on. But it really kind of just really made me think about a lot of different things. And maybe it's jarbled information today. But this whole thing, I started thinking after reading this article, I started thinking about my own experience. I started thinking about the stories of a lot of other people's experience and putting that spin on it. And we're all and they're right. I mean, were just when I deployed to Iraq, I worked for an armored car service. I drove an armored car. Our motor pool sergeant, I think he was a HVAC mechanic. He installed and fixed HVAC systems. Sheet metal worker, a Chevy auto mechanic. All of these men and women have a normal life somewhere, some way, somehow. Hopefully, your identity becomes that of a soldier during your initial training, or at least that's the goal. That's the idea. Your identity as a soldier is forged at basic training. At least that's what they say. Some people it doesn't take, I don't think. But for most it does. And you have to learn on the fly how to put on the correct mask, navigate your day. If you have issues, you have problems, even if you have good things happening to you, sometimes you got to put all that shit away. Change your mask quick. Put on a smile and go about doing whatever it is you got to do. And later you have time to take out the dirty mask. Put that one back on and process however you do. Hopefully it's a healthy way. I hope that we all can find a way to process things in a healthy manner. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen, as we see by suicide numbers and homelessness and just all kinds of different problems that veterans have. It's hard to choose the right mask. Some days it's a difficult thing. But we've been doing it for centuries, and so I believe that we'll continue to do it. I feel like I've completely beat the ever-loving shit out of this horse. And so with that, I am going to sign off. Thanks for being here again. If you are so inclined, please drop us a like and a subscribe. And, if there's this video or any other videos that we put out, if you like them, share them, please. Let's build this community. That's our goal anyway, between 3 Clicks Media and Vetertainment, and all the people here. We thank you for being here. So we'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.